That bird's back again. Yeah, he's just got back probably 2-3 days ago. Woke me up this morning. Hey, what is up guys? This is Brett here from brettdev.com, and today in this video I'm going to talk about whether or not after several years of living in Thailand does the novelty eventually wear off. So I've been living out here in Thailand for 7 years, and I remember a few years back riding in a car with one of my friends who at the time had been in Thailand for about 8 or 9 years. And I actually said to him, I said, his name was John, I said, John, do you ever feel like after being here for this long that kind of the novelty's worn off? And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, you know, when you first come to Thailand, it's incredible. It's an absolute mind-blowing experience, especially like your first holiday or your first trip or whatever. Everything is so new, it's so wild. There's tuk-tuks and there's street food and it's hot and it's crazy and there's cables in the sky and it's messy and chaotic, and it just gives you this overwhelming buzz, basically. Like coming to Thailand for the first time is basically like trying a drug for the first time, in my opinion. But obviously, like anything else, over a period of time, you will eventually get used to it. Now, most people that move here long term, they come here because they have that buzz. They experience Thailand for a few times, they come on holiday, they come back on holiday again, and they just can't get enough and they say, I want that all the time. But what happens if you have it all the time? Does the feeling, does that excitement eventually go away? I always say to people, if you come to Thailand, the number one thing you should not do is join Facebook groups. You shouldn't go onto the Thai forums, because there are literally whole communities of thousands of expats who have lived here for so long that the novelty is clearly worn off, and all they do is bitch and moan about the place. Okay, so yes, the novelty can definitely wear off on some people, and it can actually turn people a little bit bitter and sour. I don't know why that is. I'm thinking it's because, you know, they got here, they expected it to be something else. The novelty wears off on them. They're unable to maintain a positive attitude themselves because they're not right internally themselves. And so the only way they're able to be positive is to be, you know, stimulated by something else, like the environment where they live in or something like that. So when that eventually does wear off, they just go back to being the same old sad, miserable people that they've always been. On the flip side to that, you know, you can let it weigh you down like that, or you can actually be grateful for it and be grateful for where you live, be grateful that you're in Thailand, and appreciate things that, you know, sometimes you forget. So there are days that I get where I feel, you know, down and bored and like the novelty of it's worn off and I'm just, But there are also way more days where I snap out of that because that's just me being miserable, and I actually appreciate where I'm at. Now, I think what helps a lot with this is the fact of where I live. So I live like in this amazing place. I've got like a hammock right here next to me, which I spend about half the day in now. So the hammock's great. And living in this sort of environment with the palm trees and the nature, and I just lay here and I'll just watch all these mad, weird animals, these tropical birds like jumping around the trees and all that sort of stuff. That kind of stuff really, really makes me appreciate where I live. Now, if I lived in a condo, and I have lived in a condo for long stretches of time in the past, I feel like if I lived in a condo, it would be much easier to be kind of like, you know, Thailand would just become same. If you sat in a concrete condo all day and you only ever go out to go to 7-Eleven or you go out to grab some food or whatever, then yeah, I can see that the novelty wearing off pretty quickly. I mean, for some people it could be different. I mean, that's why if you're going to come to Thailand, I always say, you know, don't necessarily stay in Chiang Mai. You've got to go and explore. The first month that you get to Thailand, or the first 3 months, you should literally go and live in different cities. You know, some people like the beach, some people like the mountains, some people like the jungle, whatever it might be, the city. Some people like Bangkok, you know. I hate Bangkok. Could never live there. I like it for a short while, for a few days, but I could never ever live there. But some people love it and they really want to live there. So I think, you know, you really do need to explore. You need to find what works for you. And over time, yes, the novelty of it is going to wear off slightly. Nothing's going to be, you're not going to have that same shock factor that you had when you first got here. I mean, some people say that they do. I would say they're on the reverse end of the spectrum. You meet some people that, to be fair, these are typically much older people that have lived their entire lives in a 9 to 5 and they've retired when they're like 60, 65. And they are just buzzing all of the time. Like, Thailand is the best, it's the best. Even if they've been here for 10 years, they're just super happy. But I guess it's because they've had so many decades of, you know, not being here, so they're kind of enjoying their retirement years, which is good, I suppose. If you're going to live in Thailand long term, you need to recognize that it's not going to be the solution to all of your problems. The drug-like experience that you feel when you first come here isn't going to be there all of the time. And there are challenges as well. There are challenges with living in Thailand that can kind of piss people off, right? So a lot of people, for example, dealing with their visas, dealing with immigration, it's a pain in the arse, it's a headache. A lot of people will come here and they will just find things to have a problem with, right? So I always say this, the visa situation and dealing with your visas and going to immigration all the time, it's annoying. But for all of the good stuff that there is, that's like one annoying thing you have to do. It's like you just do it, okay? That's what you have to do if you're going to live in Thailand long term. You have to be mindful and you have to appreciate all of the good stuff you have, because it's easy to forget all of the bad stuff, especially when you've been here for so long. If you've been here for going on a decade, I mean, a lot of, like, people talk to me about England and there's things they talk about, I'm like, oh, that didn't even exist when I was there, you know? It's easy to forget all of the bad stuff from the country you used to live in and to take everything here for granted. So you just have to be mindful. And I think if you can be mindful and if you don't allow yourself to go down negative spirals like a lot of expats do, it's actually amazing. A lot of expats do this. As soon as they've been here for a decade or whatever, they just become bitter, miserable, and they just find faults and problems with everything. Oh, I've got to do my visa. Oh, it's like, it's the end of the world. Like, mate, you could be living back in like Chicago and getting shot on your street corner. Do you know what I mean? Like, you could be in England and getting stabbed when you go to the corner shop and you're bitching that you have to queue in line for an hour. This is what happens. This is what happens when a novelty wears off to an extreme degree. But as I say, I think it really largely depends on your personality. I think living in a place that makes you feel good, that reminds you of where you are, is good, whether that be on a beach, whether that be a place like I'm at in a jungle. Living in a condo for a long stretches of time, unless that's your thing, may make you tend to unappreciate the place, okay? Another thing that I think is very interesting as well is when you get a lot of expats move to Thailand, and what they'll do is, I think this is fascinating, they'll come here and they'll go and rent a house exactly like the house that they have in America or the UK. Then they'll go and they'll buy a car. Then they'll go and buy a dishwasher and a washing machine and everything else. And they come to Thailand, especially people that are retiring do this as well. They come to Thailand and they try to make everything exactly like it was back where they came from. Some of them bring all their shit over here as well. They'll actually import shit. They'll buy tons of stuff. They'll fill their house. They say, I had a big house in America, I've got to come to Thailand, I've got a big house here, I've got to make it exactly the same. And it's like, and then they just sit there and they wonder why the novelty's worn off so quickly. Thailand's different. It's unique, you know. People say to me, like, I don't have a car and I do not want a car. People say to me, Brett, why don't you have a car? I used to have cars in England. I could buy a car. It's not like I can't afford a car. I just don't want to sit in a car all day. If I need a car and if I want to go on a trip, I can just rent a car. I've got a driver's license, but I live pretty close to the city and I love riding the motorbike because riding the motorbike around Chiang Mai and through, if I want to go to Pai, for example, I go on a motorbike. I don't want to drive a car because riding a bike is cool. It's something that I can't do in the West. It's novel. You get to cruise with the sun on you, listen to some music. It's amazing. When you come here, that bird's back again. Yeah, he's just got back probably 2-3 days ago. Woke me up this morning. Anyway, what's I saying? When you come here, you want to do those things that are novel. You want to live in like a cool place. You want to eat out all the time. You want to ride your bike. You want to maintain all of those things that make Thailand really cool, and it won't become boring. The novelty won't wear off. After 7 years of living here, sometimes I feel the novelty wearing off? I do, but it's usually not an issue with the place. It's usually me just being in a bad state of mind, taking things for granted, not checking myself, staying in too much, just sitting in the room, sitting in the house for days or weeks on end, sitting at the computer, generally taking things for granted. As I say, if you follow the advice in this video, if you hang on to the things that are unique, and if you don't try and make it the same as where you've just come from, and if you have a very annoying bird that interrupts you when making videos, then you should be fine. Okay, guys, so that's my take on it. Does novelty wear off? Can do, depends on you. Okay, but be positive, have a positive frame of mind, and you should be able to live in Thailand for decades and be happy. So that's all for now, guys, and I will see you in the next video. Cheers.